It's Thursday, October 28th, 2010, and this is Geeknights. Tonight, with our special guest, international juggler, entertainer extraordinaire, and Geeknights forumite Luke Burrage, we discuss the nature of spiritual experiences.
Let's do this.
So, before we begin, to preface this slightly, we recorded about 2.5, almost 3 hours worth of conversation while Luke was actually in New York. And we decided to cut that up into a number of episodes that we'll be bringing out every now and then as we have time. So, I don't know what else I can say. Enjoy, and look forward to the next episode. I think the end of this one will give you a pretty good idea of where we're going as the topics progress. So, how do we define spirituality? What does that word actually mean?
I'm not, when I wanted to talk about this, I wasn't talking about spirituality as such. I'm talking more about the experiences that you can have in a spiritual environment that you interpret as a spiritual experience. But from an atheist point of view, we all know that those experiences are actually, well, here's the thing. Atheists say that spirituality is incorrect, it's wrong, and therefore they skip over all of the other things about it, call it incorrect, and then suddenly say it's invalid.
Well, what makes an experience spiritual as opposed to non-spiritual, right? If I go on a roller coaster and it feels really good and it makes my body emit chemicals and makes me feel certain emotions and feelings, and then I do something else and I get similar feelings, why in one case would I apply the word spiritual and in another case not apply that word? It's really a meaningless label.
This is purely to do with context. I would say it's purely to do with context because, let me just tell you a bit about my story. I was brought up in a Christian family, and we were going to church all the time. I went to church 3 times a week, 4 times a week.
I didn't know they had church 3 times a week.
Exactly.
I had church every day in Catholic school.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that kind of thing. So if you interpret an experience that you have, and people are saying, "Oh, when you feel this, that's God touching you. When you think this is God giving you an idea. When you're like this, when there's lots of music on, and you're singing, and you feel a lot of good stuff. You feel all these good vibes. That's God speaking to you. That's God touching you. You interpret that as yes, that is spiritual, even though it isn't. Even though you can get exactly the same experience from a roller coaster, you don't interpret that. However, if you woke up one morning and saw a fantastic sunrise and it was the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, if your life is from a Christian point of view or some kind of spiritual point of view, if that's what the lens
is that why
that
the
you're
sun
looking
rises
for.
on sunsets in almost every Christian book you see in the store?
Exactly. People then associate that as a gift from God, as some kind of message from God or something like that. So what I'm saying is that for most people, or most Christian organizations, or most spiritual organizations, they restrict your access to all of these other things which would otherwise cause you to have peak experiences or some kind of spiritual experiences.
I never thought of it that way. A lot of my peak
understand?
experiences involve things that Christians would, well, not Christians, but Catholics at least would not want me to have been doing.
There's this whole thing. It's so what are you going to do this weekend? Oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get so drunk I can't stand up anymore, and then I'm going to fall over, bash my head, I'm going to see stars.
Yep.
That could be, not for me, but, there's a
for
reason why
somebody.
people do that.
An example I think every man has gone through, the moment you realize what masturbation is and that you are in fact capable of it.
Well, for him, it's the moment you realize what masturbation is. Maybe for everyone else, it's the moment you get with, whatever your preference may be.
I would assume that you masturbate first, at least once.
Exactly, but that's the thing. When you have that first awesome orgasm, you're like, that was amazing, and then you spend your entire life trying to recreate that. But of course, it won't be your first one anymore. And it's the same thing. It's like with sex, it's drugs, it's going to a rock concert and being standing at the front of having 1,000 people.
But the Christians have
crushing...
rock concerts with 1,000 people.
However, they're Christian concerts. So when you're there, it's sort of like, we're going to invite God into our lives. And this is the thing. I led worship. I played guitar in the front of churches and stuff like that, leading worship, playing music. And I would lead people in to these spiritual experiences, so that we would talk about, we would sort of say, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to sing a song, play a fast song, get everyone sort of jumping and clapping, play another fast song, people would dance and stuff like that, and then you take it down, and I played keyboards as well, so then I'd put on the synth sounds, and it's all ooh, ah, sing some slow songs, everyone would close their eyes, the heartbeats would slow down
you
again.
Get the pipe organ going on?
Well, not so much pipe organ, that's sort of the big sort of church of England.
I know, Scott's referring to the
kind of church. But
The interesting study came out. It was a long time ago, but there's been a lot of writing about it since. But that you can use certain kinds of low frequency sounds to instill unnerving senses of awe, wonder, and fear in people, and they won't realize where it's coming from.
Because they can't even hear the sounds because they're below human hearing.
But
The
it
same way
literally,
that a dog
resonates.
whistle is a high frequency that a human can't hear. You know, you can get a lower sound than a human can
Like it
hear.
can resonate literally in your bowels. And
I know that's
make you
actually
feel
brown
very...
noise. It's like 14 hertz or something like that. No, seriously, that's it. I think it's around about 14 or something hertz. And if you're in a room which has got a resonant frequency to like that, you can't help but shit yourself. I think that's one of those things.
See, I've
called- it's
questioned
called
that.
brown noise.
It depends also on the amplitude, though, right? It might be
But the
not
thing is,
powerful
you
enough to
can't
shake
hear
your
it. You
guts.
can't hear it. It's one of those things that you really. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how real this is, but when you.
Well,
you
South
know,
Park,
I did.
that was the plot of a South Park episode.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What?
Like,
I didn't see that episode. What?
Really?
Which one was
They
it?
played the brown note around the entire world.
I don't remember that at all.
Really?
Brown noise, yeah. Anyway, so.
Well,
back
the
to
reason
my-
I'm dubious of
funny
that
that
in
it's
particular,
it's
just
funny.
to say, because Mythbusters has not had an episode about it.
Oh, okay,
That's in
it's
this
the kind of
next
thing-
season.
Yeah, maybe
I'm
it
just
would be,
making that up.
It would be next season. No, there was a science show or like science experimenty kind of show in the UK that did something like that, but I don't think.
Is that
my
the one where they
TV
like blow up bathtubs and whatever? Like the
there's quite a
Mythbusters
few of them.
clone?
It was one of the I can't remember what it was called, but it's got Richard Hammond presented it.
They always use the word boffins too. They never say scientists.
Yeah. I don't know why. Anyway, to bring it back,
I didn't know what that word meant for like 3
boffins,
years.
It means scientists. It means brainy people with glasses and bald heads. So bring it back to the church thing is that, you know, when you go through this like Christian rock concert, it's all about channeling God. It's all about channeling the Holy Spirit. It's all about this and that, which is a cool way to to approach it. However, I went to this conference. I was going to say atheist conference. It's the Amazing Meeting in London last year, and there was this. It was a really weird kind of sneering kind of view that they had of people who are Christians or anything like that. It's sort of like anyone who's a Christian is deluded. I agree that they are deluded, being an ex-Christian myself, but also that they're stupid or dumb in some way, and that's not true. The reason why lots of Christians stay Christians is because they have spiritual experiences which are real to them. They're not real as in God doesn't really exist, and therefore the spiritual experience actually means something in a spiritual way, like God is telling them something. But the experience that they go through, the heightened, heart rate and all of these other things that you have when you have a spiritual level, spiritual type, peak experience, that actually is fulfilling and is actually something which means something to people. And and they get it regularly from church. I worked for God TV, and my job was to go around Christian conferences and mix music that was being recorded for the TV and do sound technician stuff, and I did that kind of stuff. So in 1 year, I went from conference to conference to conference and saw lots of people doing all kinds of stuff, being slain in the spirit and talking in tongues and raising their hands and all the weird kind of stuff that you see on like the Jesus Camp DVD, the movie, whatever it was called, Jesus Camp. Have you heard about that?
Yep, I've seen it.
We saw a trailer for it.
Okay, so anyway, I started watching that. I couldn't watch it all the way through because that used to be my
I
life.
couldn't even watch the trailer.
I used to be that kid. I went to a Jesus Camp in that way. And the thing is, those experiences are real. They actually mean something to people. And this is the thing that that all of these new atheists and all these people that were at this conference that I went to, the TAM London last year, and all these different things that are going on, they missed the fact that these experiences are valuable to people. They're wrong. I mean, the people who are experiencing them are, they're what am I trying to say? They're not...
Well, they're definitely... If,
I don't think anyone...
I would say that if they are intelligent, because there are people there are smart atheists and stupid atheists, and there are smart Christians and stupid Christians. We can't say, all X's are Y. But at the same time, I believe someone who is intelligent, even if they're having these experiences, must, over the course of their lives, either ignore things they see or build up this kind of debt of cognitive dissonance that eventually something has to give.
Yeah, cognitive dissonance is pretty much the way Christians live their lives.
thing
And I can
is,
tell you
I
that from experience.
I don't see, I don't know, maybe the people at the TAM London were different, but I mean, most of the atheist writings I see, even grumpy old Richard Dawkins, right? All his stuff, and mostly Carl Sagan stuff, is all about having spiritual, those levels of experiences, but like looking at the sky and thinking,
I know.
Look at that. There's so many stars out there. There's more stars than they're like grains of sand on the beach. holy shit. And it's like, oh my God. And if you go out there and you know that and you look at the sky, you can have that, a very similar experience.
Well, I think that's why Carl Sagan or like Alan Watts resonated so much, because they did take I guess it's kind of the framing these experiences, saying, look, you can have these experiences for anything because those experiences are life.
Yes, I mean, I don't think anyone's saying that experiences like that aren't worthwhile. I think what they're saying is, look, here's someone who goes to church. They're getting these experiences regularly from church, right? And they like them. Who wouldn't, right? That's part of life, right? But yet, if they're smart, they would know that those experiences could be had without church. So why would they continue to go to church? And
this is the thing.
Why would they continue to pay money to the church or whatever it is when they could just go and get it without this
is the
stupid
thing.
church?
The
and the
church
lies and
is
the...
actually providing a service. You are going along there. You're following the rules. It's like role playing. It's like a game that they're playing. They're going along, and there is sort of like certain games. Well, it's not games. If you go out to the front at the church and you're getting prayed for, and the pastor is standing there and holding on to you and and praying for you, it's like you have to respond to it in some way. Otherwise, because the pastor or the minister will keep praying for you until he gets a response. So it's one of those things that it's sort of like a game that they play, but they, consciously or unconsciously, they know if they keep going to it, they're going to get attention. They're going to get like a whole group of like, you've seen these televangelists and stuff. They're getting like thousands of people all putting out their hands and praying for one person. For that one person to be the center of attention, that's the only time that they've ever had 1,000 people looking in their way, all wishing them, a fantastic experience, all blessing them.
Why don't they just go get some friends? It's free.
Maybe they don't realize they can't. Maybe they don't have the same experiences.
Is that this kind of thing is never addressed by any of these new atheists. They do address, hey, life is excellent, and Carl Sagan, when I listened to that Symphony of Science song, what was it called?
The Still More Glorious Dawn.
Yeah, the Glorious Dawn one, and that sort of made me tear up the first time I heard that. And there was another one of his songs that it made, was also We Are All Connected or whatever that one was called. That was good. The rest of them sound all the same and they annoy me now. But, when the first time you hear that affects me because I know what they're talking about. I know about astronomy and I know about science and I know about, that we're all star stuff and all that kind of stuff. And Richard Dawkins opens his God delusion with the thing is like, I lay on my back and I looked up at the stars and I thought it was wonderful. And he has this kind of rapturous experience thinking about what am I trying to say? Evolution and all the science stuff that he does. He looks at it and finds it wondrous and gets that kind of spiritual fulfillment out of it. However, it takes a lot to get to that point. And it's very difficult to get to the point. It happens sometimes with me. Like, for the first time I ever managed to, well, I say it takes a lot. The first time I ever managed to juggle 3 balls for like 30 catches and then stop when I wanted to rather than dropping them, that's still one of these peak experiences in my life. And the next time I had that same level of experience from juggling, at that same, like a comparable experience, was when I managed to do 11 balls for the first time, and there was a lot of a gap in between that. And the 11 ball experience was when I just got into a car crash, flipped my van over, going down the steepest road in England.
Then you jumped out of the car and took all the balls out and just started juggling.
I was waiting there and I was so frustrated and I was so hyped up. I was like, right, I'm going to do this. And it was the first time I ever managed to do 11 balls, 11 throws, 11
waiting
catches.
for the police or the ambulance to show up?
I was waiting for, no, not the ambulance. I was waiting, we'd cleared the van away. I was waiting for the tow truck to come and take away my utterly smashed up vehicle and then waiting for someone to come and pick me up. It was one of those bad things. But it was this weird combination of a car accident, smashing my car up, and then doing this juggling feat. And at the time, maybe like 6 or 7 other people in the world had ever done 11 balls, and I was then one of them. So it was like a high-level thing, and it affected my life in a way that I didn't go back to university the next year. I mean, it was one of those things. It's like I could have died then, and yet I've had this experience, and I need to move on with my life. It was a life-changing experience. It's difficult to have those kind of experiences, and this is probably the main reason why I turned away from being a Christian, because, the whole cognitive dissonance and the whole self-delusion stuff, that helped me over all of like the scientific questions and God and stuff for a long time. But it got to the point where I was like, okay, I believe Jesus exists, but it might not have been God, but it was good. And, I believe in evolution. I believe the world is old, and there's all these different questions that you sort out. But there was this whole thing in my head, or not just in my head, but in my body. It's like all these spiritual experience that I've had, they must be true at some level, otherwise, because what I experienced was real. And it was only when I had many other peak experiences outside of a religious context, outside of a church context, outside of a like classically spiritual context, when I actually lost my faith completely and I could identify myself as an atheist or maybe an agnostic, but it took me a while to actually work out what it was, but I realized that I didn't need the church anymore for the spiritual peak experiences, because I'd taken up surfing and that was good. I'd been juggling. I was performing for the first times of juggling. When you get like 200 people like giving you a standing ovation for a show that you're doing, that's a great feeling, when you like do a really high level juggling trick for the first time, it is like a rapturous experience to rival anything that I'd felt in church. However, I'd had a lot of experiences in church, so it was difficult to sort of like go, it isn't actually the church environment, it isn't the Holy Spirit. But the thing is, you need these kind of experiences elsewhere to have people who go to church regularly to not go to church anymore. That need has to be fulfilled, and it's not going to be fulfilled by looking at the stars, and it's not going to be fulfilled by thinking about evolution, and it's not going to be fulfilled in lots of other ways,
So do we take a bunch of Christians and have drug-fueled raves that are mandatory attendance?
No, the thing is, I'm not into the drugs as a spiritual experience. I have had spiritual experiences taking drugs.
I guess it's more because this raises a lot of interesting kind of contrast between my own experiences and yours, because I, Catholic school, and I can safely say that there were never peak experiences involved with Catholic Mass and the way the school and the church and everything.
Yep,
literally,
I
church
understand.
was this terribly boring thing, and I'd go to it, and even as a very young child, I remember thinking, this is all kind of silly, and I just never quite got it.
That's
and then,
pretty much the same as me
independently,
with the Judaism.
I had peak experiences outside of school, so I think a lot of it is just the context of when you have these first few experiences, and I'll bet a lot of it is developmental, and I think this speaks very, very well as to why the modern church movements are doing so well, while Catholicism, at least in the Western world, is collapsing left and right.
Exactly. This is what the whole megachurch phenomenon is about. It's give people peak experiences, and they will keep coming back week after week. They run these things like rock shows. They have, all the lights going on and thumping music, and they'll have a pastor who's really, enthusiastic and charismatic and is leading people into like a frenzy. It's awesome. It really is. If you ever go to one of these things, it's a big show. And people get something out of it. And what do the atheists have in return? I went to this, like I say, I went to this TAM London, and I might be going again this year. It's in a few weeks' time, in October, and I've just got a gig at the moment, which means I could probably end up in London the day beforehand, so I'm probably going to go again this year. However, it was, lots of people sitting round and listening to conferences, and there was only one point in it where I thought this is even slightly comparable to the excitement of a quite average church service.
Now here is where I can make a point finally. I was thinking about this. So I get experiences like this, and a lot of people get these very strong peak experiences from things like the Penny Arcade Expo and the way they rile up the crowd and this huge audience of thousands of people. And I don't think it's fair to say that atheists don't have the same thing, because I would argue that anything that is not a religious event is by definition a neutral event, which therefore is an atheist event. So every single rock concert in the world that isn't Christian rock,
I'd say it's a secular event rather than an atheist event.
Because I feel secularism and atheism are the same, I would argue, except that someone who is specifically a secularist is entertaining cognitive dissonance.
Maybe.
Anyway, but whatever your semantic point was, right? The thing is,
my point was that we get these peak, like people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. However, what can an atheist movement offer to Christian people to bring them away from Christians, which has got something to do with atheism? But this is the weird thing.
Well,
the thing that I saw, the thing that really impressed me was a musician called Tim Minchin. He's from Australia, but I think he lives in the UK most of the year now. And he is just awesome. He was funnier than anybody else who appeared on that stage. He was a better musician than all of the other musicians. He actually had a message which was more poignant and, in a way, more interesting than any other people. And he was just an all-around better entertainer. It's a good job that I'm a better juggler than him. Otherwise, I think I'd feel inadequate in every single way, because
he also juggles?
No, he doesn't juggle. I'm saying that
at all.
because
Okay.
I'm a better juggler than him. I still have
you said
worth.
it.
The thing is, I'm talking about my own worth, because
Yeah.
he is so awesome in so many ways. that I just feel insignificant next to him. If that makes sense, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not
just
making
because
sense.
you said that you're a better juggler, that implied that he had some amount of juggling.
No, it's because maybe
Watch,
he
he
can
has
juggle.
secret skills you don't know.
I mean, he could just bust out with like a 7-ball
He's juggling
cascade.
27 balls at home. You don't know.
But the point is that when I actually watched him, I came in when he was doing like his sound setup, and he sang this song, and then he's like, I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to do it with the piano. And he did the same song again, word for word, but this time played along to the backing track on the piano. And I must admit, I had one of those fan moments that I have only very, very rarely. But it was amazing. But then again, I go to a juggling convention, which isn't an atheist event, but then it's a very secular event, let me put it that way. Like, there's nothing to do with spirituality there. And there was a few times when I saw people on stage in their theatre shows and with their juggling, which made me have that same kind of experience. And I had a really good massage, and I almost had a spiritual experience in there. And I had sex, and I almost had a spiritual experience. But you understand that. But the thing is, it's like, what are you going to do with the skeptics in the pub? You're getting together, and there is fellowship there, which is a big thing. And I think that's something that the new atheist movement is getting better at now.
I think part of it's that the so-called new atheist movement, or the very kind of vocal active atheists, the people who get to the point where I'm going to run and have an atheist convention, are not the majority, and they're not the real atheist movement. I would argue that the primary real atheist movement is kids growing up now who are entertained by the internet and entertained by other things, who just don't even care at all about religion.
I agree with that.
It's because they're getting peak experiences basically constantly from the infinite piles of
internet pornography,
entertainment media, and information. You know, it's like, just like you watch, you can get like peak experiences watching even little videos of TED Talks or YouTubes or whatever.
Yeah.
Just because, and the thing is you were complaining that some of these like people at the amazing meeting were, calling like Christians stupid. Well, the thing is, there are some ways to get experiences that would be sort of inaccessible to people who are stupid. Like, if I watch a TED Talk, I might be like, oh my God, that was amazing. But if somebody isn't as educated, right, or intelligent or whatever, they might watch it and just be like, what, some hick from the woods watches it. He's like, what's that word mean? He doesn't, he's not going to get experience from it. So that's why you might get this sort, somebody, while you might not have had that much excitement at the amazing meeting and most of the things.
Oh, no, it was good. I enjoyed it.
No. I mean, you might not have had such great, like amazing, experiences at like just sitting there watching people talk. Someone else might have found what they were saying just so fascinating,
But at the same time, I think his point stands that for the kinds of people who go to like these mega churches, there are very few things that can offer that same sort of experience.
Football.
Yeah, football is it? Sports, I would say. Probably not.
All right,
probably
I'll
not
qualify.
baseball.
They can't offer the same sort of experience framed in this kind of bigger, that like watching football, you can get really into it, but you can't feel it as some sort of universe-changing event unless you're crazy.
This Super Bowl is pretty universe-changing.
The thing is, you have to be seriously into your football team for it to become like a life-changing experience.
No, I mean,
like a car crash
I'm a fan, but I'm not like seriously into it, right? You don't see stuff hanging up my house, but I'm a Giants fan, right? But if I watch that video from Super Bowl 42, I can watch that 1,000 times, and it is good every time. It does not get old.
Well, consider this. One of the peakest experiences of my life, and it's funny, but this very much, like, this moment is burned into my mind, is when Scott and I and a bunch of our friends went to an RIT hockey game, and it was like the important hockey game.
Oh, that was the best.
And they were down by 2, and it was standing room only. We're like crunched in. We're not even in seats. We're kind of there semi-illegally, like just standing there.
We're not illegal. We paid.
We weren't
for the
actually
tickets.
sitting in seats. We should have been off in the standing area.
That's fine.
And all our friends leave. They're like, yeah, it's over. They've lost. And we stuck out to the end, and they won in this like crazy
They
scored
scored a goal
circumstance.
with a few minutes left, so they were down by 1. Then with like 2 seconds left, they scored to tie it up, and then they scored in overtime.
Yeah.
And they won it.
It was such a peak experience. But Scott, what if someone takes that same level of experience, or that same exact experience, but for whatever trickery or belief or something, are able to frame it in such a way to where that wasn't just a hockey game. That's the world. That's your soul.
Right. They're basically, as soon as the thing is, it's okay to just have a hockey game, right? But for someone to try to come in with that extra bit, right, is that person is actively trying to deceive you, usually with the intent to give you, for them to, to get you to give them money or to give,
but
for
forget
you
about
to
their
give them
intent.
loyalty.
Forget about their intent. The thing is, they're offering more at face value. If I offer you $100, this other guy offers you $100 and a check for $3,000.
I'm just saying, that whatever all these things is true, and I do think this is what the church has got something going for it, because it is a repeatable experience. You go along to a hockey game, you're not going to get that every time. It's one of those standout
yeah,
things.
we haven't had it ever again.
Exactly, it's one of those standout things. But you go to one of these Jesus camps, you go to one of these ministry meetings, you go to a prayer meeting, and you go forward to prayer, you're gonna have an experience. Or maybe not every single time, but it's a good chance. But then you don't want to do it too often, because it's like self-regulating in a way that you don't want it to be too often. You can get burnt out on that kind of thing. But my entire reason that I wanted to bring this up, and why I want to talk to people about this, is because this whole dimension is missing from the whole kind of new atheist or atheistic movement, or whatever you want to call it. It's the discussion of the very real spiritual experiences that people get from churches is missing. It's like people don't know it. And I think that people who haven't been Christian or haven't had these Christian experiences don't know the power of them, and why it makes people believe. Because for me, it wasn't just a thing that I was going for, and it wasn't that I didn't not believe in science and all these other things, except it's just that these experiences to me were very, very real experiences. And it was only until I had enough of them outside of church that I realized that they only came from that. And I don't think I'm that unintelligent. I don't think I wasn't very clever back then. It's just that these experiences were so real, and that's what it came to. I remember then sitting with a friend of mine, a juggler, and we were good friends. We were hanging out at his home. And I was talking about and I said, well, I still believe in something spiritual, because I have had these experiences, this was even like after I must have been maybe 22 or 23 at the time, and I was just holding on to the fact that there must be a spiritual element out there, because all of these other things I'd always associated them so much with spirituality, and all these experiences. So there was something there, and I didn't know what I was feeling. And he just said to me, Luke, it's just people make shit up. They just make something up, and then they tell it to somebody else, and the other person believes it, and then they tell somebody else, and that's how everything begins. He says it's like the same with, all these different stupid, spiritual things and ley lines, and I can't remember these other things, but he came up with this whole list of things. And this is a guy who, has been to the Glastonbury Festival all the time, all these different things. He's sat in the stone circles. He's experienced all these things, firsthand, but he's just like, no, it's all bullshit. It's because he just said it's all bullshit. Someone just made it up, attached some meaning to it, and then other people believe them. And he says that's how everything starts. Somebody just makes something up, tells somebody else, and that's where it all begins. And it was that moment which I thought, fuck, I'm an atheist.
Yep.
Because it really was that time when someone just really told me it's all made up. The experiences are real. I mean, he didn't actually say this, but this is what I was saying in my brain. It's like, all the explanations for all these experiences are just made up. It's not about standing in the right spot and in the ley lines, and then the sun rises and you having a spiritual experience. You're going to have that spiritual experience, but these rules around you, it's like the ley line. Somebody actually had a spiritual experience here, and then there, and then in another place, and then they drew lines between them and said that there must be something meaningful at this spot, and then they go there at, the summer equinox. What's that?
There's a gas leak.
Well, no, I'm just saying they go there, and of course they're going to have
There's poison ivy.
It's a preconditioned spiritual experience just waiting for them because of their expectation. But the expectation is based on made-up shit that other people have just made up, and you believe it.
Yep, and I'll agree with you that it's even intelligent people are very prone to this. It's human nature. Because
you find the patterns.
When I was in middle school and I was in high school, I mean, I'm an atheist now, and I've never been a Christian. But when I was young, I got to the point where I was convinced that I could tell the future with tarot cards because it always worked. And I would tell people's fortunes, and actually a lot of people were afraid of me in high school, and I would tell their fortunes. And it wasn't until just before I went to college at RIT, and I was watching a documentary on cold reading, and I'm sitting there and literally, like, I had this moment of,
I saw that.
Shit, shit. And I sat down and I went through like the motions of the tarot reading. And you're like,
this is what I did and this is what I did. Yeah,
I sat down with one of my friends and I was like, I'm going to tell your fortune. As I was doing it, I realized I'm just telling him everything he told me last week. Oh my God.
This is why
I saw that documentary on cold reading much earlier in life than you did.
Yeah.
And I think, Luke, your whole point is, the atheists aren't paying attention to the fact that these, experiences exist or that they're important. I think part of it is because, you are actually sort of in the minority. Like most of the atheists or non-religious people that I know are people who were never in the, the kind of religion that has, the rock concerts and the mega churches and all these sorts of things. Most of the non-religious people I know were Jews or their family was non-religious, or they did something, any religious life, if there was, or if they had a pre-atheist life, was boring and was not, they weren't getting any experiences from any religious source. They were getting, if they had any, awesome experiences, they were always from something else. Judaism for me, and most of the other Jews I know it's
a cultural thing.
It's a cultural thing. Yeah. It's like being Irish, It's like if you're Irish, that doesn't mean there's no religion implied. There's Irish Catholics and Protestant Catholics. There's Irish Protestants and Irish Catholics, and they're always fighting. But being Irish means that you wear green on St. Patrick's Day and you get drunk, and they don't associate any, it's called St. Patrick's Day, but it doesn't have any meaning. Everyone,
I know what you mean.
And Judaism was always the same kind of thing. You eat, on this day, we eat apples and honey. On this day, we eat, this kind of food. And everyone gets together on these certain days of the year to have a party. And, it doesn't mean anything. And they never tried to give us, in any of the religious places we ever went to, no one ever tried to give any kind of experience at all.
But the thing is, with the Jewish faith, is it's like you get these charismatic churches, these mega churches. They're going for the spiritual experience, and they're going for the whole fellowship thing as well. They're going for the community thing, get together, go on, and go out and have pizza this night, go bowling this night.
Who doesn't like pancakes?
Well, exactly, and that's what I think that's what the Jewish religion or the Jewish culture is so good at. And that's why so many people really value their Jewish identities and their culture, is because it's such a family thing. It's such a community thing, and they want to keep that part of it, and they want their kids to be part of it as well.
The mistake the Jews made, at least in the U.S., right, is they emphasize education a great deal, right? Judaism itself is about education. They talk about studying the Torah. You're supposed to study, right? And if you don't become a rabbi, they're gonna want you to study to be a doctor or study to be a lawyer, or it's all about studying, and education is very, very highly valued among the generation of Jews before me, and also my generation. So by emphasizing someone to become educated,
they become atheists.
They learn science, and then they're no longer.
And again, this is another thing that all the religious people, they're down on science and they're down on all this kind of stuff. There's a reason, is because when you are educated in that, you do lose faith in things. And like I say, when I was younger, I was really into dinosaurs. And this is, talk about cognitive.
Who wasn't into dinosaurs?
Exactly. And for me,
would
dinosaurs.
you not worship dinosaurs if they came back and could talk?
Yeah, I'm just saying, for me, dinosaurs were really impressive. I knew the names of lots of them. I don't know them any now because they all change and things. But
I know, right?
The point is that in my head, I knew dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago. 64, 65 million years ago.
Give or take.
Whatever.
Millions.
But also in my head, there was this fact that the Earth was very young, like between 10 and 6,000 years old or something like that. And I was the kid in geography class who would get 100% on all my exams with geography, because I was actually quite clever and I knew about this because I lived an outdoor kind of life, and I knew how caves were made and things like that. And I knew caves took millions of years to form as well, or thousands, hundreds of thousands of years to form. And yet still, I thought the world was only 10,000 years old. But looking back now, there's absolutely no way I can work out how I thought those two facts fitted together in my head. And yet somehow they did. Yeah, and I can't explain it except for this massive, segmentation in my brain where reasoning and scientific stuff went in one direction and religious stuff went in the other. And there was this very clear dividing line in what situation I was in, where science would be in one side and religion would be in the other side.
Well, my brain had sort of a similar but slightly different problem, right? Is I would go to school and they would teach me history, and then I would go to Hebrew school like Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, and they would teach you Moses or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I would always try to think, okay, so when was Moses and when was Alexander the Great, right? And the thing is, this is also part of the reason people keep getting on me about my memory, is that my school system actually did one thing that, throughout my entire public schooling, I was in one town, and they actually did one good thing, in my opinion, which was they always stayed away from rote memorization, right? Every single class I was ever in, they were like, listen, this is not about, rote memorizing things.
So you never learned how to remember anything.
They would never ask. They would never ask you what year did X happen.
And as a result, Scott legitimately asked me in college at one point. This was at RIT. he thought that the Romans got the idea for swords and that sort of fighting from the Middle East, like the knights of the Middle Ages.
I didn't know.
Really?
So it's like I didn't know what, the
we
years.
would have very
they
long
never
discussions
made us
of like, so what came
memorize.
first, this or that?
If there was a physics test, they would give you the equation
I like
sheet.
how Scott's
You
just
would
trying to
never-
bowl over that fact right
You
now.
would
Yeah.
never have to memorize equations. It was all about the ability to solve problems.
To work
which is-
things out for yourself,
Which is
yeah.
why I'm kind of good at computers and solving problems and those sorts of things, but I'm not good at memorizing facts and numbers because
Actually-
they said they tried to de-emphasize it. And I think it is too heavily emphasized in most education systems, but I think that there was also this problem of not having it at all, which I have no,
Yes, I
I'm
mean,
not
for
good
example,
at
Scott,
memorizing.
Which came first, Sparta and the whole 300 thing, or Alexander the Great?
Oh, shit.
Wah, wah, wah.
This
This
they're
is gonna be
both
good.
Greek.
Well, no, Alexander was
actually-
Macedonian.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
it's-
Sparta was Sparta at
it
the
was
time.
Macedonian.
It's in
Well,
Well,
the
Sparta,
Greece.
that was
Yeah,
after
it's
the
Greece.
Dorian.
Yeah,
I'm
migration.
gonna say the Sparta came first.
All right, you got
Am I
that one.
right?
You got
Pretty
that
good,
one.
pretty good. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, see that's a hard one.
Actually, I think most people wouldn't be able to know that. Hey,
Yeah.
actually, this comes up with another topic that we might do. We could
mean,
do
like
on a different show.
the Trojan horse and all that kind of shit. That's around
that's-
the same time as Sparta.
No, that's pre the Archaic Age of Greece. That's,
That's
I gotta see-
legendary times.
Wait,
Actually,
was that real or was that not real?
We're not sure. We know that there was a city somewhere
there was
around
a city
there.
called Troy.
Basically, there were Greeks, and stuff happened, and they were all mostly gone. And theoretically, the Dorians, who are kind of Greeks as we know them, moved into their area. Like the Sparta we know was founded on the site of
I gotta
what
get.
might have been old
I
Sparta.
gotta get a book because this is getting too important to
Okay.
not know.
I've got this great thing about another atheist topic, but I think we've gone on quite a long time here. Maybe we should.
Yeah.
This has been Geek Nights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geek Nights is not one, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geek Nights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geek Nights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.